Okay.
Hey there, Groovesters, Groove Stars, Ridgely here with another Groove Growth program, and I'm absolutely delighted to welcome a dear friend. We go way back, way back. Did a lot of different things together over the years. Dr. Joe Rubino, thank you so much for being here with us today. Joe, how are you, brother?
I'm great, Ridge. Always great to be with you, and honored to be on your program.
You know, I just think back to when we did the TV show together. We did the TV show together in Dallas, Modest to Millions, way back when. That was great. And many other things that we've done. And you went on to create the Center for Personal Reinvention. You've written 12 books. You've done all kinds of things. But I think it's really interesting. And I want to just kick this off, see what your thoughts are on this one. One of the areas of deep expertise that you have is self-esteem, right? Helping people with their self-esteem. And where did you start out? As a dentist. What do dentists do? They help people with their self-esteem. There's got to be some kind of connection there, man. You didn't think about it that way?
Well, I never really, had that connection made, but there's a connection between why I became a dentist and self-esteem. And that was because I really didn't know what I wanted to do. I didn't think very highly of myself. I knew that I couldn't speak. I was told I couldn't lead 3 people in silent prayer all the time. I didn't think that I could write, and of course I could. I was an extreme introvert, and so I didn't know it at the time, but what better profession to go into than one where people can't talk back to you? So I didn't realize that was part of the process of choosing dentistry. And don't get me wrong, dentistry is a great profession. It's just that until I really entered into the personal development arena, I didn't know what I was missing. What I didn't know, I didn't know. And so when I realized that I was playing small, then I had a whole new world open up for me. And that's when I decided to transition out of dentistry.
Yeah, I mean, I just think that's so interesting because as we talked about before, I work a lot with dentists. And one of the things that they talk about is giving people self-esteem. And I thought, wow, well, that's so interesting. So you came at it from one side, ended up giving the self-esteem over to patients, and then transitioning into making that a deep learning for people through the center that you've created, through the books you've written, the talks you've done. I mean, you got to tell me a little bit about that transition, man. What was that like?
Well, it began when I think it was in 1991, when I had been in practice for 10 years. And I was invited to attend a personal development seminar for a weekend. And of course, being an extreme introvert, I said, we don't do personal development. And through a little coercion, and I had a business partner who was also a dentist. We went together, so we kind of supported each other that way. And during the weekend, one of the coaches who actually changed my life asked me a question, and he said, what would, if money weren't an object, would you continue to practice dentistry? And I had to think for a minute, no more than a minute. And I thought that, well, I was blessed to have 2 very successful practices, the respect of my patients, the respect of my peers. And I said, absolutely not. And he said, well, what would you do? And I said, well, I'd love to do what you're doing, impacting people's lives. And it's not that I didn't impact people's lives through dentistry, elevate their self-esteem and help them in so many ways. But I decided at that point that I was playing small, that there were a lot of gifts that I had no access to at that time that I could and did develop, and that dentistry was a stepping stone. So, there are no regrets. Even though I was successful as a dentist, I used a lot of the skills that and the connections that I made in dentistry to transition into personal development. And you and I met through network marketing. Network marketing was another $1 million business that I had created, where that was a stepping stone to personal development. So I had this thought in my mind that, okay, I'd love to go in and learn the skills that these life-changing coaches that I had hired to support my life to be more passionate and more of a contribution to other people. But how am I going to get from $1 million dental practice every year to going into personal development, not having any foundation at all in that arena. So I took a year-long rigorous personal development program, which turned into 10 years of rigorous personal development work. And I discovered network marketing as a vehicle to earn the type of income where money was no object, so that I could then enter into personal development and do it as a passion. And so that's what I did. I entered into network marketing, became a top distributor in one company until that company went out of business. Took those skills to a second company, became a top distributor in that company for 3 years, decided, okay, now I want to devote my full focus and time to personal development. So founded the Center for Personal Reinvention, have created a dozen programs to support people, not only to learn the tools to elevate their self-esteem, the foundational principles to make their lives work more optimally, but then if they like to teach those principles to others. So not only can they impact their own life, their family's lives, but they can actually earn a nice living as a self-esteem elevation coach for adults or children, or a life coach or a relationship coach, or a number of other coaches.
Yeah, and I love that ripple effect that you created. It's like you did the work yourself, made those changes to your own self. Happiness is an inside job, says Jim Rohn, my mentor, and then took that out to create something that not only serves people, but gets other people to ripple out the lessons. That's got to be a great feeling for you.
Well, another question that one of my coaches asked me was, what's your vision? What is the master game that you'd like to play? And, I said something pretty tame and small. And he just shook his head and said, yeah, that's not big enough for you. So I thought about it and I said, well, I'd like to impact the lives of 20 million children and 20 million adults to live their best lives. So he says, well, how are you going to do that? And that's when I had to really start thinking, well, how can I do that? And I knew one of the lessons from network marketing was duplication. And so I knew that I couldn't do it alone, but I knew that the principles that I had learned were so life-changing that if I could teach those principles to other people and certify them as coaches in different regimens and aspects, they can go and teach them to their family, to their friends. They could develop a coaching business, which we have programs to show you how to do that. And so I am very much on my way to realizing that dream. And so it's been a very rewarding process, because what I found is that any vision that's just about yourself, is self-serving, doesn't inspire anyone. So if you can have a vision to make the world a better place, love what you're doing, make some money in the process out of contributing your gifts to the world, it doesn't get any better than that.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think that's fantastic. And having a big vision leads you to thinking a lot more deeply, like, how am I going to do this? So talking about self-esteem for a second, I know there's a lot of people that are like waiting for Dr. Joe to drop a couple nuggets on us over here. Where do you think is the best place to start? If I'm feeling like, wow, I could really benefit from more self-esteem, or from elevating or enhancing, what's a good starting point for that?
Well, I've coached thousands and thousands of people over the last 30 years. And one of the things that I discovered was that if self-esteem is lacking, then people are, by definition, living a diminished life. And so I've actually formulated a 3-step process to guide people to elevate their self-esteem. And those 3 steps are: heal and complete your past, do a proper assessment of what's so in your life in your present day, and design a future and choice that empowers you. So we can talk more about each of those if you like.
Yeah, sure.
Healing and completing your past is essential as a starting point, because we all have some experiences early on in life as a child, typically before the age of 6, where we had a traumatic event, we had an upset, and we made something up about ourselves that didn't support us. We made something about other people that didn't support us, and something up about the world that didn't support us. And so as long as we have viewed the world from that 6-year-old perspective, or wherever it is that we first decided that we were unlovable, not worthy, not good enough, somehow deficient, defective, not capable of producing our dream life, then we started to create evidence to support that notion, which didn't support us. And over the course of months and then years and then decades, we've literally created tens of thousands of pieces of evidence that said, I'm just not smart enough. I'm just not handsome enough. I'm not pretty enough. I'm not athletic enough. I'm not charismatic enough. There's something significantly wrong with me from stepping into my best life. And that's the lie. It avoids responsibility for doing the things that are necessary to learn the skills that we want to support our life to move forward, to enhance our communication skills, to develop the qualities that will support us to contribute and develop our gifts in the world, to live the vision for our dream life. So I've created a program where we've got about 50 foundational principles that are paired with exercises. The exercises allow you to experience the principles into your life so that you become the principles. So as you've healed and completed your past, you no longer are at the effect of the decisions that you made that don't support you moving your life forward. You then can go to the second, and we can get into more details of as you like, but the second element of the program, the process of the self-esteem process, is to identify the 6 key areas of life and see what's working in each area and what's missing that's put in place would have that area be more effective, more productive. So those 6 areas are your health and appearance, your wealth and your finances, your career or your job, your relationships, both your personal relationship and your relationship with other people, the area of having fun and recreating and pursuing your passions, and the area of personal and spiritual development. So if you were to rate each of those areas 1 to 10, if you're not a 10, then you've settled for less. Something's missing that could be put into place where you could develop that area, be more empowered, to be happier, more fulfilling in your life, in your work, in your abundance, in your relationships, whatever that is. So once you get a sense of what's missing, you now have the ability to design a plan and choice, which is the third step of the self-esteem process, where you actually get to identify what your gifts are. We all have them. Very few of us know what they are or have developed them fully to the point where we can impact the world by sharing them with the world. We can create a dream vision where if we had a film strip of our life a year, 5 years, 10 years from now, we're living our dream life. We're just, we have to pinch ourselves every day because it doesn't get any better than this. This is what a vision of your dream life looks like. The qualities that you want to be known for, the things that you'll be surrounding yourself with, the people, the abundance, the animals, the fun, the trips, whatever that is. You'll also be, along with being the qualities you want to be known for, doing the things that you love to do at work and at play, you'll have the things that are meaningful in your life. And you'll be contributing to the world, because any vision that's about you alone is self-serving and won't inspire yourself or anyone else. So you'd be well served to play this master game where you create this vision that's so huge that you'll be empowered to always set goals, short-term, medium-term, long-term goals to achieve that vision on purpose. You'll also have an action plan, a daily action plan to set actions that will be in alignment with those goals. And here's an important piece that many people forget. You'll need a personal development plan so that when you're stopped, because any vision that's worth pursuing is going to be larger than life, larger than you know how to do. You'll need coaches, you'll need programs to support your success. You'll need to be empowered to break through the stops that you will inevitably encounter, because whenever we set things that are beyond us, we don't know how to accomplish them fully. So we need help, we need support, we need to have access to the area that we don't know about the stops in life, the blindness, so that we can achieve breakthroughs. And of course, we have to enjoy the process, because that's the true definition of success in life, when we can enjoy the process in the pursuit of these goals that honor our values, contribute our gifts to the world, and have a meaningful life that is worth living. So when we have healed and completed our past, we're no longer at the effect of that negative self-talk that tells us, you can't do that. You know, think about who you are. From myself, I decided at age 5 that I was defective. I was bullied by some teenagers. They didn't realize they were bullying me. They were just having fun. They tossed me around like a football. One dropped me, hit my head on the concrete, went home with a concussion and a big egg on my head. So I decided that people were mean and cruel. I was small and insignificant and unworthy, and the world was a dangerous place. So I had to protect myself. So I grew up avoiding people. I would see someone that I knew in grammar school, I'd cross the street, put my head down because I was afraid of being hurt. Soon became known as quite the snob, not because I thought I was better than other people, which is what maybe they had assumed, but just the opposite. I felt like I wasn't good enough, so that I had to protect myself. Went into dentistry, profession that people couldn't talk back to me. Didn't know all of this at the time. It was all invisible. I've discovered it since. Long story short, through personal development, I decided that I made all this stuff up. Didn't serve me, didn't serve others, didn't serve what I was up to in life. Decided that I was willing to give up my right to be a victim, willing to give up my right to be right about all the baloney that I made up early on in life, and I continued to make up till I was 35 years old. At that point, decided to reinvent my life. So I formed the Center for Personal Reinvention, because if I could do it, anybody can do it. And so now my commitment is to teach these principles to the world, so that people can empower their own lives, because everyone is magnificent at their core, children and adults. And with these principles, they can change and transform their own lives, transform the lives of their children and their grandchildren and their families. And for those that want, go out into the world and play the master game that makes a difference, where you go for the brass ring and you leave a legacy in the world. And that's what's possible.
You know, it's so interesting, Joe, because I don't know we've ever had this particular conversation. I go all the way back to how we met.
Yeah.
And we met initially because of the magazines and the publications that we put out.
Yep.
When I got deeper and deeper into doing the personal work myself, what happened to me? I came out to Hollywood, wrote a screenplay. It was picked up by a major company, and then it got killed because somebody else came up with the idea. I wrote a second screenplay. It got picked up by a major company, and it got killed a second time. In other words, deals completely done. 2 record deals, same thing. Executive moved from one company to another. The deal got killed. The deal got killed. And then when I look back at what was the driving motivation that I was unaware of at the time for starting a magazine that no one had ever done before, horrible business, by the way, magazine business, horrible. What was it? They couldn't reject me anymore. I was a publisher, right? So when you think about how we met
Yeah.
because of that magazine. So now I'm grateful for that part about it. But the same thing, how deep these things drive us. And I imagine that I made this little tiny wheel here because I would imagine that most people, when they're talking about your health, your wealth, your career, your relationship, your fun, your personal spiritual journey, this has got to be lumpy, right? I mean,
Yeah.
This one's pretty good, but this one's not so good, and this one's okay, but the other one's not so good. So most people, if they're being really transparent with themselves, I would say have a pretty lumpy wheel in terms of trying to balance all of those things. Do you find that when you're in your work?
Yeah, and you know, the whole thing about that, Ridge, is that we have it that problems are bad and that we should avoid them because of those lumps. We don't want the lumps. We don't want the problems. We don't want the mistakes. But you know, I wouldn't change a thing. The fact that I went to dentistry was a great experience for a lot of reasons, but it taught me a lot of skills, and it provided me with the possibility to go to the next step, the next business, which was network marketing with the dental company. So that opened the doors for me to be successful in that company. And then the success in that company allowed me to be financially free so that I could go and contribute my gifts to the world, develop those gifts, create the personal development structures that would help other people without having to worry about the money. So, going back, I would have wanted to avoid, first of all, getting dropped on my head when I was 5 or 6 years old. But you know what? That was the biggest gift of my life, because I would have never went into self-esteem elevation had I not had my own self-esteem diminished when I was a little kid. So all these problems are great. We have to embrace them, know that there's a gift in every problem, and it's our job to find out what that gift is and to share that gift with others when we discover it.
It's interesting because, as you know, I've been practicing Buddhist for a very, very long time. 40 years, a couple months ago, by the way, 40. I was like, okay, you're old. Okay. I started young. And one of the promises of Buddhism comes from the notion of total responsibility. And it basically says, if you take complete responsibility for all aspects of your life, all of the 6 that you laid out in the self-esteem process, then everything does what you just said. It becomes a golden memory. No matter how horrible it was, no matter how difficult it may have seemed, no matter what other people might think about, oh, that divorce, that abusive stepfather, that whatever the thing was.
Yeah.
If we take full responsibility and do the work, all of it becomes a golden memory.
Yeah, I didn't know that was the foundation of Buddhism, but it makes perfect sense because I strongly believe that we're given opportunities, and the opportunities aren't always golden opportunities on the surface. Oftentimes they're problematic opportunities that cause us to learn very valuable lessons where, perhaps we damage relationships out of who we're being at the time. Perhaps we make mistakes that set us back financially, personally, and without those problematic happenings, we would not have the spiritual growth, the emotional growth, the ability to learn and to grow and to contribute something that we didn't have access to before. So it's all good. It's our job to find out where the good is. And, if we operate from love as opposed to fear, if we operate from contribution as opposed to greed, if we operate in a win-win scenario, good things will come from that. And so the opposite is true as well. When we see people who are operating from the negative emotions, rather than oppose them and curse them and act with anger or sadness or fear or anxiety, know that everyone is doing the best they know how to do. And an upset is predominantly about the person who's upset. And we can release ourselves from that drama cycle and not get caught up in other people's stuff. And when we do that, we can bless them. Perhaps we can edify them in some way. We can contribute in some way where maybe they would see something that they didn't see before, because we're all at different points in our journey and we all have blind areas that we don't see. And I know that I've trained myself over the years to ask myself that question. What is the gift that this person has come into my life to contribute to me, even though it might not seem like a very pleasant gift at the time, depending upon the situation or the circumstance. But it leads back to it's all good and it's all here for our development. And if we embrace personal development and we embrace the fact that we're all connected and we're spiritually one, this is supposed to be about entrepreneurism, but it is. Because the way I see that is as a way to contribute to others. I have no apologies for capitalism, because when done properly, it lifts people up. It takes people out of poverty. It removes the need to give people stuff out of feeling bad for them because they're incapable or unworthy of creating it themselves. I have the opposite expectation and opinion that everyone has magnificence within them. And if we can empower people, we can find the gifts that are in every single person, different gifts, but every single person has capabilities and abilities to overcome challenges and contribute to others and to themselves and to their families.
Yeah, no doubt, man. We both share a deep passion for that. Talk to us a little bit about mentorship. What's your thoughts on mentorship? For me, it's been among the most important aspects of my life.
For me as well. I'd still be a resigned dentist if not for mentorship. So not only from the perspective of, I'd like to differentiate, there are coaches and there are mentors. Mentors have walked the walk before, they learn distinctions about whatever they're mentoring you in. And coaches ask the right questions. They ask questions to have you uncover the answers yourself. So it's a little bit different perspective, but they're both essential in the process. And my opinion around what it takes to be a successful entrepreneur is, first, the mindset. You have to have the ability to believe in yourself and to believe that if you follow the process and you fall in love with that process, you will be given opportunities to meet the right people, to get the right tools, to grow in your own journey, and to contribute as you go. Now, mentorship is around learning the way of success without having to reinvent the wheel, because someone has already done what you want to learn. And so when you compare a coach and a mentor together, the mentor can show you the way, can help you to see where you're going off track, to measure and readjust and to recommit to being on track. And the coach is going to ask you those questions that open up the blind areas, what you don't know, so that you actually get to experience life in a different way. Because when you see things differently, you become different. That's what will change an extreme introvert into someone who has the ability to, to speak to hundreds of thousands of people in a stadium, or to do whatever it is that has allowed us to get out of our comfort zones, to play that master game, to contribute without fear that, oh, that negative self-talk is telling me I'm not good enough, I can't do that, I'm stopped, what if I fail, and all the stuff that goes along with that. So that's a lot of baloney. And you have the ability to give up your right to be invalidated, give up your right to be a victim, give up your right to play small, and know that it's all good when you take that giant leap of faith. You trust in the world, in God, in spirit to support you. You know that you will be guided, and all of that happens.
Yeah, I love that. I absolutely do. I have a saying I often say about entrepreneurs, that they have an underdeveloped sense of fear and a very poor memory.
Good point.
Not afraid to start over. It's
right.
okay. And I forgot that I failed last time. Okay, I'll just do it again. So talk to us a little bit. I love to ask this question. Imagine that you had the ability to hit a time warp and you could go back 20, 25 years. And with all of the wisdom and experience that you have today, speak to the Joe Rubino of 25 years ago. What would you want to say to that Joe?
Well, I'd go back 60 years, actually. I'm 66.
Okay.
So I'd go back to the 6-year-old and I'd tell him it's all good. Know that even though it's painful at the time, you needed this experience. You needed to learn something in order to use it to your benefit and the benefit of others in the future. And so when you trust the process and you fall in love with the process, no matter how challenging that process can be, like you mentioned, divorces or bankruptcies or challenging financial experiences or whatever that is, know that you needed the experience in order to reach the next level. You can't do it all by wins. The wins are important, but you have to have the setbacks along the way because you need the experiences. So I would tell myself to enjoy the process and fall in love with the process and know that it's all good and there'll be plenty of help along the way. It's your job to be open to the feedback, open to the opportunities that you might not have seen if you weren't open to that. Know that every person you meet has something to contribute to you, and it's your job to find out what that is. And so if I had that advice, I would have enjoyed the process a whole lot more instead of hating the process for the first 35 years of my life. And I think that's the main thing.
I love Willie Jolly, he loves to say, a setback is a setup for a comeback.
There you go. Great line.
Oh, man, it is a good one. It's one of those, oh, that's a writer downer. We're going to write that one. So, and if you were to say what, seeing, you've been around a lot of people who have gone from obscurity to doing well, coaches that you've trained, people that have built businesses thanks to what you've taught them. What would you say are the top couple of characteristics of the successful entrepreneur who gets themselves into that space?
Well, first is belief. It's the mindset where you expect success to happen so that you generate the self-motivation to do the things that will create the success deliberately. So many times we expect failure, and so we self-sabotage, and then we say we get to be right about something. We get to be right about, oh, I knew I couldn't do that, so we quit, we give up, we go back to resignation. The other thing that is a critical component that very few people talk about is our emotional addictions. It's critical that we understand how we're wired, because what I've discovered through the self-esteem process is that we all are emotional addicts. And during times of upset, we typically respond in one of four ways: with anger, with sadness, with fear, or with anxiety. Those are the four most common. There are some others, but if we respond with anger, which I did for the first 35 years of my life regularly, because my quote was, how dare you? How dare you drop me on my head? How dare you mistreat me? How dare you not, respect me? And so I would respond to people with anger, and what I found was that when you're angry, you attract more anger into your life. So maybe you can be forceful in the moment, but it has lots of negative side effects. You damage relationships. People don't like you. You become ineffective personally with people. You have a miserable time in your life. Happiness suffers. You don't build rapport with people or contacts. There's so much negative there. A lot of people stuff the anger, they go to sadness. They become addicted to sadness. There's something like 350 million people who are clinically depressed. They have brain chemistry changes. Why? Because they don't realize that they're addicted to sadness. They will choose paths in their lives, people, circumstances that make them sad. And I say that with quotes because nobody can make you sad. Only you can make yourself sad. So if you can recognize that you have an addiction to sadness, you can exit out of that addiction by creating new interpretations and taking responsibility for being happy. The third element is fear. 24% of women, 16% of men are addicted to fear. So why? They live on the edge. They don't have enough money. They live in dangerous cities. They marry somebody that's going to make them afraid all the time. Whatever it is, they're one step away from losing their job. Something because they have an addiction to fear. They don't know that. These are all invisible addictions because we don't know how we're wired. So people who are addicted to fear give up their responsibility for not being afraid, for putting themselves into safety, creating a reserve in their lives. And the fourth predominant one is anxiety. There are people who live anxious about everything all of the time. Why? Because they get to be victims. They get to feel sorry for themselves. They get to evoke the pity of other people. It's the same for sadness. It's the same for fear. So once we identify how we're wired, we now can give up our right to be a victim, give up our right to be an emotional addict in the time of stress. And I'd love to give our viewers here today a short exercise. This is one of about 50 foundational principles that I'll share in my programs. And once you see life differently, life changes. So the exercise and the challenge to you is to keep a journal, an upset journal. Every time you're upset, write down the answers to these questions. And so you can go back to your original upset if you can remember it as a child, but it doesn't matter because you've relived that same upset tens of thousands of times since. So in the time of an upset, when someone says or does something that makes you angry, sad, afraid, anxious, whatever that is for you, write down these questions. What did someone say or do? What are the exact words, as if you were a reporter for a legitimate publication that's going to report just the facts, not the opinions? What did you decide or make up or buy into about what that person said that didn't support you, that caused you to be angry, sad, or afraid or anxious? And are you willing to give up your right to be a victim, to be anxious, to be afraid, to be sad, to be angry? Because if you're not, and sometimes we'd rather be right than happy. We'd rather be right than effective in our communication. We'd rather be right than anxious. So, or give up that anxiety. So if you're willing, you have to remind yourself every time you're in that upset state, because you're going to be in that upset a lot. Initially, you're going to forget that you have this ability. The more you debrief after you keep this upset journal, the more you'll recognize a pattern here of your chronic upsets. So once you've agreed that, yes, I'm willing to give up my right to be a victim, I'm giving up my right to be angry or sad or afraid or whatever. And then you in that moment, you can create a new interpretation about what just happened. And we're not condoning bad behavior. So maybe you're in an abusive relationship, and the interpretation that you've created is that that person's a jerk and I'm a victim. That doesn't serve you. What is the new interpretation you can create? Well, maybe that person was abused their entire life by their father or their mother or somewhere, and they made up a bunch of stuff that doesn't serve them about survival. And again, we're not condoning their behavior toward you, but you don't have to be at the effect of their bad behavior. You can create an interpretation that says, I'm worthy of respect, I'm worthy of love, I'm worthy of being around somebody who respects me. We get to train people how they are to be in our presence. And so when you create the new interpretation, then you can create some action that serves the interpretation. So maybe you can get some coaching, or you can get some help, you can get out of your abusive situation. Maybe if you're financially struggling, maybe you can get a mentor or a coach to help you to see the things that you're not seeing there. So you take some action that supports you, perhaps supports the relationship. You don't have to stay in an abusive relationship, but if you want to enhance and work on the relationship, you take some action that will support that. You then ask yourself, what's missing that if put into place would support the next interaction so that I can avoid going into my addictive mood, which is like a heroin addict injecting heroin every time the upset happens. So when you can journal this, you can see a pattern, and you can see that you have the option of exiting the drama cycle. You have the option of being responsible for your communication, for your decisions in your life that move your life forward, that empower you, that empower others. And so when you can do an exercise like this and you can learn, and this is just, I know we're limited with time, so I'm going to briefly end it here. You have the ability to take such an example and add it with 50 other distinctions that will allow you to see life differently. And when you see life differently, you become a different person. You change, you become empowered, you lose your need to react in ways that don't support you, you give up your right to be a victim, and you take responsibility for everything that shows up. You act from your commitments as opposed to what's convenient, because you're no longer committed to your convenience. You're committed to personal development. And so that's just a brief example of what it means to live an empowered life. And that's what I would invite everyone to step into.
I love that. I mean, it's just so strong, man. What did somebody say or do? What did you decide or make up about that? And are you willing to give up your right to be a victim? That's awesome, man. I'm scribbling notes over here, man. I'm scribbling notes as fast. I know you have a gift for everybody. Tell us a little bit about what, when they hit that button, you all know how to do this. You go below, you hit the button. What's there that they can get some more? Because this has been fascinating. I could talk about this with you all day long and not get tired for a second, but tell the good folks what they can expect.
I actually have two gifts.
Right.
So, and let me explain why there's two gifts. What I've learned, you know that I'm passionate about personal development. So one of the gifts is about personal development, but the other gift is around the new technology called brain entrainment. And so what we found is that some people are resistant to personal development. They're resistant to changes because they've come out of this survival mode most of their lives, where they avoid things because they have a gatekeeper protecting themselves and their brain, in their brain. So the two gifts, the first is called the Brain Entrainment Miracle, and it's an ebook that I wrote that talks about this new technology that supports people to be open to personal development and to have transformation happen faster. The second gift is called the Secret to Success and Happiness in Life, and it's about the self-esteem process that we've spoken about briefly here. It's actually an hour television program that I did for public television. So those two gifts will give you the tools, the brain entrainment tools, to make the process go faster and more effective, and the personal development process. So if you enjoyed this conversation, you'll have a better sense of what it's like to better immerse yourself into personal development and take it on, as we both have, as a lifelong pursuit, as opposed to something that's just an interesting conversation piece for an hour.
Yeah, for sure. It's just been so great. I mean, I've just loved this conversation 100%. So guys, gals, everybody, hit the buttons below. You know what to do. Go get the gifts from Dr. Joe. Final words from you to the world. What would you want to share? Closing thoughts from you, Joe. Thank you so much, first of all, but what would you want to say to everybody?
Well, my challenge is that don't make this a one-time or a momentary entertainment. If you're committed to moving your life forward, if you're committed to being totally abundant, financially free, if you're committed to having warm, loving relationships and fulfilling work and living a life that's filled with passion, I'd love to challenge you to make it part of who you're being, your daily existence. And I mentioned I'm 66 years old. So in order for me to realize my dream, my vision of impacting the lives of 20 million adults and 20 million children, I've created these structures and a team of light bearers, as I call them, people who want to learn these principles so that they can impact their own lives, impact their kids or their grandkids' lives, go out and teach them into the world if that's something that they'd like to do. Or if you're the CEO of a company, teach your employees these principles. So we have a program called High Self-Esteem Kids, where you get to mold them as they grow so that they don't have to be reinvented like the rest of us. High Self-Esteem Adults is about personal reinvention, elevating self-esteem. If you're not a 10 in all the areas of your life, I'd encourage you to step into that program and to change your life with it. It changed my life and thousands, tens of, dare I say, millions of others. Life coaching, other principles beyond self-esteem elevation. Grasp the principles so that you can see life differently, you can be different. If you're not a 10 in every area of your life, join our team of light bearers so that we can elevate the consciousness of the world. I'm clear that we can. The world is going in the wrong direction. If you look at what's happening out there, it's not good. We have the ability to change things. Join our team as I've joined others who have imparted these gifts to me. Let's make a difference in the world. Don't play small. Put your petty concerns aside. Go for the brass ring. And I wish you Godspeed in doing so.
Dr. Joe Rubino, thank you so much for your time and wisdom. I've absolutely adored every minute that we spent together. Guys, hit the buttons below, get some more information, become a light bearer. What a great and noble cause, aspiration, and goal. Dr. Joe, thanks, man. I'm sending you a huge hug, brother. Thank you.
Likewise, Richie. Thanks so much. Great connecting with you again, as always. And thanks everyone for watching and being part of our lives today.
Thank you all.